So this is the Daily Mirror front page, Daily Mirror London front page of today, Monday the 29th of March 2021. And inside on these two pages, they've got now this is the recollection by this woman, Jennifer Arcuri. And she has been in the news for some time now, and she has been allowed to be in the news and feature as a denier of the crucial fact, as if she was given impunity by the whole of Fleet Street. If her claims in the Daily Mirror and the Sunday Mirror yesterday were published, say about 2 years ago, when she first hit the news, then Boris Johnson would not be in the post that she is now, because the scandal would have destroyed his electability as the leader of the Conservatives. Because at that time, before the December 2019 general election, Boris Johnson was very vulnerable to attacks by the opposition, which is dead now, but at that time it would be a very different thing. So Johnson would not be the leader of the Conservative Party, and he would not be in number 10 Downing Street. So it is a direct result of the lying by Fleet Street, including by the Daily Mirror, the Sunday Mirror, that Boris Johnson, the liar, the serial liar, is the leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister in place. This is not some kind of invention, and it's not an exaggeration. So everything that has been said about Boris Johnson, those people who are watching this, who may not have had the access or the time or the resources or the skills to check, fact check, these are the very short kind of key core facts that matter, because he is the person incumbent in the post of the Prime Minister of the country. So it really is important to understand that he has no moral kind of qualms, he has no integrity, and he has no honesty. And so therefore he is unfit. And that is even before taking into account the disaster of the grasshopping kind of policy, changes almost every 24 hours about serious matters that affected the lives of millions of people in this country, and still affect the lives and security and safety of millions of people in Britain today. So the very short look at Boris Johnson's serial lying and serial adultery is that his current fiancée, Carrie Simons, is not his first fiancée, of course, because Carrie Simons is almost the same age or maybe even younger. I don't have the figures in front of me, but she is not, in terms of biological age, she is not very far from Boris Johnson's eldest child. He has 4 children with Marina. Marina Warner. This is the kind of details that would be known to people who actually closely follow, and spend the time in following these things. But he has reportedly 4 children with this Marina person, who is a licensed law trader. And he has had any number of other children with other women. All the facts are not known about those others, but at least the facts known about another child with another woman. His first known kind of wife was a woman whom he divorced when he met another person. The number of women that he has had affairs with is uncertain, because there are so many, and so many still unpublished kind of facts. But the published facts about his dishonesty were summarized on a rare edition of the BBC television program called the Andrew Marr Show. So this was done while Andrew Marr was absent from presenting that edition on a Sunday. And it was presented, just the one edition. It's a Sunday morning program. And it was presented by Eddie Mair, who is no longer with the BBC, but at the time was working on BBC Radio. So Eddie Mair asked Boris Johnson, "You are a nasty piece of work, aren't you?" And Boris Johnson was visibly not prepared for that question or comment. And that will remain on the records, as far as records as we know them are kind of capable of being maintained. "You are a nasty piece of work, aren't you?" Now that is really absolutely truthful summary. And anyone can look up on the internet, and the quote is, "You are a nasty piece of work, aren't you?" Question mark. And Eddie Mair is spelled E-D-D-I-E, Mair, M-A-I-R. Moving away from the kind of media persons, and Eddie Mair was exceptionally kind of able to make that comment, because the 99.9% of the Fleet Street, including the Mirror, which is running this as a commercial exclusive, the 99% or 99.9% of the writers and editors and reporters and investigators in Fleet Street are doing the job of lying and suppressing the truth 99.9% of the time. And that includes the Guardian, the Daily Mirror, the Mirror Group, Sunday Mirror, the Sunday People, and of course the entire kind of collection of newspaper titles controlled by the dirty digger Rupert Murdoch, the Australian-born racist liar and appeaser of fascists and fascism through the Times, which he acquired in the 1980s, and of course the Daily Scum, the Sun, and the Sun on Sunday, or the Scum on Sunday. And what is happening in the media is that this is the only part of Fleet Street today that is running this And the Mirror Group is the only one that is running this information, which was known for years, has been known for years. And the fact that this was not published, even by the Mirror Group, shows that 99.9% of the times, the likes of the Daily Mirror, the Mirror Group, Sunday Mirror, Sunday People, etc., are openly, brazenly colluding. Because when the parts of Jennifer Arcuri's corrupt kind of relationship with Boris Johnson were published, it was quite obvious from the pictures, the images, the body languages, and the frequency of appearances together by these two. It was clear to any reasonable observer, rational observer, that they had been having sex, which is what Boris Johnson actually specializes in. I mean, he has no qualms, he has no morality or ethics about how many times, how many people, he cheats and how many people he cheats with. Now, Marina is the daughter of Charles Wheeler. Charles Wheeler was a BBC kind of presenter, etc., etc. And she knows, or she knew, that Boris Johnson was already married, so she was not a kind of innocent. She had an affair with him while he was already married. And so he kind of disintegrated his marriage, first marriage or that marriage. As I said, there are so many that you cannot say which one was the first or which one was the second. But whoever Johnson was officially or formally kind of married to at the time he was having the affair with Marina Wheeler, Charles Wheeler's daughter, he was cheating on that one, and he was cheating with Marina Wheeler. And then he moved on. And Jennifer Arcuri is the one that has made the most headlines, because she has been promoting herself as an entrepreneur, because this has been an enterprise for her. The affair with Boris Johnson after the events, that is to say, post facto in Latin, which allegedly is one of his expert areas, that he speaks Latin or writes Latin or understands Latin. As I said many times, the ability to speak a language generally is not the same thing as having an extra dimension of wisdom or intellect or intellectual extension. It's just another language, and you use ordinary, commonly used and understood and exchanged and agreed concepts, linguistically agreed concepts and terms and terminology. You just translate them and interpret them as and when necessary, because most translations are not authentic in terms of the originality and the actual integrity of the original version. So always there is some room for interpretation. Having said that, his Latin and Greek and whatever kind of linguistic skills have been exaggerated, as other things have been exaggerated about him. What is extraordinary today, Monday, the 29th of March 2021, is that he has ignored, as the decision maker or as the kind of person who has the final say in the government, on behalf of the government, as to what the policy is on anything. But in the last 24 hours, Johnson has ignored very serious concerns about what the extent of the easing of the lockdown should be. What should be and would be and must be the safe kind of level of extending the easing. What has been described wrongly and dishonestly to shore him up as a kind of able person, competent person, is the use of the phrase or the term or the word roadmap, which is completely corrupting the whole picture. He has ignored the latest serious scientific and kind of evidential and concerned opinion, advice that the lockdown should not be eased. And he has said that he would ease the lockdown and he would open up things and places, including schools, shops, and other places, despite the warning. Now, this is a decision he has made while there is mounting calls for setting up. Well, I'll come to the explanation of the futility of investigations and inquiries, but there are mounting calls for inquiries into the deaths of the hundreds of thousands of people, whatever the actual correlation or connection were between his decisions and the eventual consequences borne by the people who died and the devastated relations and mourners and families who have suffered the losses that they should not have suffered and should have been kind of having their relations who have died with them still today. Had it not been for the brazen and contemptuous and cruel disregard of warnings at the time, affecting all aspects of the access and the mixing and the other aspects of what is now known as lockdown. So this is Boris Johnson, not just an adulterer, serial adulterer, a nasty piece of work who is cruel to his children, because nobody who has had as many children as he has with Marina Wheeler should be indulging in the kind of brazen and open, almost, defiant, adulterous activities and sexual activities, even including, as today's Mirror says, he cheated on his family home. Now, family home clearly, by definition, means that his children also lived in that home. Family means his wife, who was Marina still because that all of these things happened during the second 4-year term that Johnson procured for himself. Look up the word procure. That includes procuring the services of prostitutes and prostitution and perversion. Procure is an immoral kind of term, even if it is used by the British bureaucracy, civil service or uncivil service, of procuring defense and other resources. Essentially, in ordinary language, ordinary usage of the English language, word procure is a bad word. It's very closely associated with the procuring of the services of prostitutes and illicit other services and resources and contracts and access. For instance, Jonathan Aitken, one of the descendants of or relations of the poisonous Beaverbrook. I'm not saying Aitken has been poisonous in the sense of Beaverbrook, because Aitken has, at least in my knowledge, because I campaigned alongside with him for the civil rights of 2 victims of the racist deportation policy fronted by Marlene Rees, the racist Home Secretary that was in place when James Callaghan was Prime Minister, Labour Prime Minister in the 70s. So I campaigned along with Jonathan Aitken, not like a personal along with, but he was one of the people in the group that regularly attended various campaign meetings in support of Philip A.G. and Mark Hosenball. Now, Hosenball is spelled not like a Pakistani or Muslim Hussein, but Hosenball is Hosenball, Hosenball, Mark Hosenball, who was an American journalist who was being deported, and as was Philip A.G., who at that time was actually an investigator. He had been employed by the CIA, which he called the company, and that was the title of the book, Inside the Company. His main book about the CIA's kind of record and behavior in Bolivia and other places in the southern hemisphere of the American continent. And so, therefore, the illicit kind of word or the word procure has been used in reports about the role that Jonathan Aitken played while he was a prominent member of the Conservative Party and an MP in the early 1990s. And the Guardian report actually collapsed him, outed him, which eventually led to his being convicted and sent to jail. That was a rare event, series of events altogether. And Aitken was also the one that Margaret Thatcher kind of snubbed and kind of distanced herself from as her revenge for Aitken's snubbing Margaret Thatcher's daughter Carol Thatcher. Aitken had a relationship with Carol Thatcher, but then he refused to marry her or continue the relationship. So, procure is what applies on every level to Boris Johnson. Now, the astonishing thing today is that this is the case. This is the second day the Mirror Group is running this story. And this is important. This is actually worth running because it actually concerns the fitness, the moral fitness, the democratic fitness, the fitness in terms of security as well. Now, in the years that Johnson was having the affair, according to the admissions so far, there may be other details that Jennifer Arcuri is not disclosing because remember what I called her. She is a business person. And having sex with Boris Johnson was not something that she accidentally had, because some of the things that she is disclosing show that she was very conscious of what he was doing and how she was manipulating him, and he was probably manipulating, because she is claiming that he told her that she was the only American that he, Johnson, had ever fancied. That is what she is saying. Now, and the other details about the kind of physical details of what they were doing when they were having sex and before having sex. I mean, those details appear to be kind of being disclosed as part of a program, as a plan to maximize the attention, the focus, and the exclusive nature of this deal between her and the Daily Mirror Group. And the Daily Mirror Group is calling it world exclusive, which means that it is selling. It is selling the contents of the interview to English language media across the world. And this is the deal. The Daily Mirror Group is doing that because it's a business proposition, and she is selling it as a business proposition. Remember what she said to various kind of so-called journalists that were asking her questions about the details, including their mildly put question. They should have been rigorous in asking that question, but they weren't. So that was part of the policy to protect and shield Boris Johnson from criticism at crucial time, because they didn't say that she refused to answer questions, etc., etc. They actually retailed most of her spin during the last 3 years, let's say. And they would not have done that if Boris Johnson was not Boris Johnson but Jeremy Corbyn, because they would have declared a national war against Jeremy Corbyn if a fraction of what Boris Johnson did and was protected about was the case with Jeremy Corbyn, because Corbyn was assaulted by the Daily Mail and the Daily Mail group and the Sun for about 18 months after Corbyn became the elected leader of the Labour Party. And the main source was a woman called Christine Chapman. And the details about Diane Abbott and Jeremy Corbyn's affair were also published in order not to entertain the readers, but to damage Jeremy Corbyn and damage the Labour Party as fronted by Corbyn. That was the part. Now, this revelation is not, even by the Mirror Group, is not in any way intended to damage Boris Johnson. What it is to entertain with this kind of sleazy details. That is a very significant difference. Now, the difference becomes accentuated by the fact that the Daily Mail, which would have, and I use the word crucified within quotation marks, would have crucified Corbyn if a fraction of what Boris Johnson has been doing could be the factually asserted facts or news. And yet, on the day after the Sunday Mirror published the main confessions by Jennifer Arcuri, they're talking about an abortion bill by Tiggy. Now, Tiggy was the kind of close friend of Diana at the time, and she was the nanny for these two boys, William and Harry. So Tiggy was like, Tiggy has got a name at the time, the Tiggy leg bark, was in fact, because of Diana's various unstable kind of relationships, is a Tiggy leg bark was the actual loco parentis. She was the mother, while Diana, the biological mother, was absent. And the boys were very loyal to her, and she was very loyal and protective to her. But all of that is really not significant in the context of what Boris Johnson has been up to and what decisions he has been making and how many people are affected. So instead of running the follow-up or something based on that confession by Jennifer Arcuri, the Daily Mail is running this, which is not of any importance in the life of the nation and society, and this is not affecting. This could be kind of interesting to sadists and sexual perverts, but this is nothing to do with the real policies that affect the society and affect millions of people's lives in Britain and in the world as well. And the reason why the Daily Mail group is not running that story on the front page is not unconnected with the political agenda. Because they want, the Daily Mail group, they don't care. They don't care even if Boris Johnson was found guilty of many offenses in a court of law. That he hasn't been charged and he has not been arrested and he has not been therefore convicted or tried or convicted. Even if he were convicted, they would say that Boris Johnson is really a very caring person, because he says that the deaths of the people from COVID-19 would haunt him for the rest of his life. And there are other things that are worthy of front page treatment, like the schools that are hiding and have been hiding for many years rapes and sexual assaults on girls by boys across the country, across the spectrum, fee-paying private schools, etc., etc. Now they have got a reluctant kind of reflection only on one page, page 21 of the Daily Mail, about Jennifer R. Curry. And the headline or the heading is, "We had sex on Boris's family sofa while his wife was away, and she arrived home 10 minutes later," says R. Curry in latest lurid claim. Now they're calling it lurid claim. They're not calling it the confession to the truth that everyone has known but has suppressed up to now. And this is part of the political agenda and racist agenda in many ways, because Corbyn was assaulted by the Daily Mail, acting with racist motivation, because Corbyn was overtly, outrageously, wrongly and falsely and inaccurately painted as a supporter of the Palestinian people. That was treated by the Daily Mail group and the scum and the Daily Boris Graph, even by the Daily Mirror. Remember, the Daily Mirror is supposed to be a supporter of the Labour Party, but it was united in assaulting Jeremy Corbyn for allegedly helping or supporting the many demands of the Palestinians. Corbyn committed no crime in doing that. Corbyn broke no law in doing that. In fact, what Corbyn was doing, if that is correct, because we didn't witness any of this, we only read about these statements he made in support of the Palestinian people. Even if he did that, any of that, or all of those things, he would have actually done the image of the UK as an independent state a good deal of favor, because all of these statements supporting the Palestinian people, we are making a distinction between that and any kind of event that Corbyn could be proven in a court of law with the evidence that linked him with any attacks, violence against innocent people. That is the distinction we make here. And so the lawful, reasonable, rational causes for the Palestinians that Corbyn was supporting or being associated with other people in supporting were in accordance with the Universal Declaration or declarations on human rights, both the United Nations based ones and the ones based on the European Convention and other international treaties that the UK state at all times was an active signatory to. It is a consequence directly of Corbyn's own intellectual unfitness for purpose, that he didn't say what I am saying, or he never said what I have been saying about all of these things, all these issues, including the fact that he was hounded out of office, let's say, by the anti-Palestinian, racist, controlled British media and Fleet Street. The people didn't abandon Corbyn. The people were misguided and misled against Corbyn. Note the difference. And today's difference between the Daily Mail and the Mirror Group illustrates just how poisonous and untruthful and immoral and dishonest and corrupt tools of lying the Fleet Street media and the mainstream media is and are, because they're not about news. They're not giving news, that is to say, they're not breaking to the readers an event, an account of an event that affects them in a serious way. They are manipulating 90% of the times, and they're doing entertainment as part of the manipulation cover up. And they're reluctantly inserting a bit of news here and there, just like this tokenistic routine that the Daily Mail is doing about what it calls the lurid details, as released to the Mirror Group by the American woman businessman and sexual operator, let's say. Because everything she is saying about Johnson now shows that she never kind of had any real, genuine, commonly understood, humane attachment to him. Because he was incumbent as the mayor of London and he was usable as a tool to enhance herself. She says that she met him when she was a student. Now it's a big leap from a student to becoming the central part of his exhibits or exhibition and being treated by him as worthy of hundreds of thousands worth of public resources that he gave to her because he wanted to use her as a sexual kind of partner. And she was quite willing and happy to go along with all of those because it was not just a sexual relation, it was a business, because she was benefiting from the connection to feature at events that would have taken many years for her to reach if she were to do that herself. But she skipped all those years. She avoided having to wait for the hard slog and appeared at events in Israel and other places that she shouldn't have been, but for Boris Johnson and her relationship with him. So that relationship was all the time very profitable business-wise in every respect. And this is something that should have been discussed like I'm doing by the Fleet Street media or the mainstream media in Britain, but they never did. Because if they did discuss it, because they had the facts, I had the facts from the revelations at the time, let's say between 2 and 3 years. And as the main decision-making journalists or editors had. So they shouldn't have hesitated. They shouldn't have hidden the facts. I knew that she was having, and she had had a relationship. And not only that, she was also continuing to shield him. Because she decided, for whatever reason and in return for whatever benefits, that is not yet published or publicly known or confirmed or admitted. But she played a crucial part in shielding Boris Johnson from total destruction political career-wise. Why am I saying that? Because of John Profumo. John Profumo was the conservative minister in the conservative cabinet of Harold Macmillan. And he had to resign because of the affair with Christine Keeler and probably somebody else. But Christine Keeler was the main one that featured as the woman that he had affair with. And compared to Boris Johnson, John Profumo didn't do 1% of the damage or the adultery that Johnson has been doing and been shielded about. But there was almighty row for Profumo to go. And in the process of this scandal, covered by Fleet Street and others, an innocent man was murdered. And his murder, Stephen Ward was murdered. And his murder was covered up and disguised as something else, accident or something. And Stephen Ward was murdered to shield some other people. And so compared to what happened to John Profumo over the Christine Keeler affair in the, which broke in the 1960s, early 1960s, Boris Johnson should never have been even allowed to stand as a parliamentary candidate. And yet, Fleet Street continues to not connect the two or connect Johnson's open adultery and other irresponsible and criminal behavior, because he's giving the money. That amount or those amounts that are already known in the public domain as being given to Jennifer Arcuri are only tips of the iceberg. There must have been other benefits she was given. And this is something that is many times worse than what John Profumo did and was accused of having done. So while on the one hand, fascism is being introduced as evident in the fact of the contents of the latest more powers to the police bill or act, the brazen disregard for any known duties in morality, in public office, code of conduct, accountability, and fitness for the job. All of these are being ignored by the Daily Mail, by the scum, the Boris Graf. And this one in the Daily Mail is not about Boris Johnson doing anything wrong. It's about Jennifer Arcuri disclosing lurid details. Think about the difference. They would never have done that with the Corbyn. They would have said Corbyn behaved as a devil or something. And this is the political choice and decision by the likes of the Daily Mail. And this is when we say diagnosis, this is what I've been talking about, is the diagnosis of Fleet Street. And that is what Fleet Street is. And the others, like Beaver Brooks' poisonous, lying Daily Mail, is overdoing the happiness message around Boris Johnson. And they're painting him as wearing the mask. And they're praising him, they're praising him for his alleged battling on with his own fitness regime. And then the big splash is, that is big headline on the front page, that is the splash in newspaper terms. So the splash is PM, they don't call him Johnson. Now PM elevates him to a kind of objective level of competence and fitness and dignity, which he doesn't deserve, and he has no record to substantiate. The PM's new drive, now it's the PM doing the driving and leading. This is an unfit person who is a serial adulterer and liar, and they're painting him the opposite fantasy. Drive, to help Britons. The entire country is dependent on Boris Johnson's drive to help them. Not only help them, but to live longer. So he's past the level of Winston Churchill and even surpassed the abilities attributed ever to Jesus Christ. Now, think about this headline. How the hell can they substantiate any of it? PM's new drive to help Britons live longer. You cannot add anything to that. He has surpassed the abilities of Jesus Christ. I mean, and the Daily Star is a Daily Star as well. It has got absolutely stupid front page item. And I shall come to that. And they are promoting Johnson. And there is a piece about members of the House of Peers, the so-called upper house of the two houses of parliament, so-called. There is not going to be any debate in the House of Commons demanding answers to many questions arising from Boris Johnson's criminal behavior in paying billions of pounds to Conservative Party donors. So what we have in Britain, with the collusion of Fleet Street, is a banana republic. Because not only was John Profumo guilty of far less breaches and offences than Boris Johnson does every single week. But other members of the succeeding cabinets, for example, the one immediately before Johnson took over, several members of the so-called cabinet, whatever their actual kind of standing, they were forced to resign their cabinet posts after suggestions of minor sexual improprieties about or against or involving women. And it's amazing that those minor sexual improprieties that were revealed by the Fleet Street in big headlines, the same papers are failing and hiding the confession. It's not somebody's rumor, it's confessions by Jennifer Arcuri. And the Sun is insulting intelligence. And the Sun is insulting intelligence by focusing on Boris Johnson's having sex with this woman and he's having lost a sock. It's not about the fact that he committed serious breaches and he lied while he was doing the sex with her. So they are actually elevating him to the level of a very energetic kind of addict to sex, who was so energetic that he lost the sock in the process. And they're not talking about the death of democracy in there. They're not talking about the banana republic behavior by Boris Johnson there. In fact, the scum that his son has got the Scottish-born criminal, racist, anti-Scots server, Trevor Kavanagh, who is attacking the Muslim parents protesting against the Batley school teacher who recycled and repeated the anti-Muslim cartoon originally published by Charlie Hebdo in France. And terrible Kavanagh is saying that the protests by the parents and the guardians of the children of the Batley school are a threat to freedom of speech and democracy. In fact, they are killing British democracy by protesting. Now, anyone who is viewing this for the first time and watching this kind of discussion, diagnostic discussion of the corrupt British politics and British media, needs to know a few footnotes. For example, the death of democracy that this scum is warning its readers about in connection with the protest by the Batley Muslim parents and guardians. The death of democracy is something that has been in the kind of main list of demands by the people who have demonstrated against the new police bill in Bristol and in other and in demonstrations that are being held in other cities outside of London. And that bill is the legitimate target of demonstrations because the largest number of democratic activities that have been associated with so-called British democracy over the last, let's say 200 years, after Peterloo and other places. We shall come to short reference to Peterloo. All of those democratic rights to protest and free speech or freedom of speech have been made illegal in effect by the new bill. It is that comprehensively fascistic. It's a legislative move to making fascism legal in this country. Fascism to be enforced by the British police. Now remember the claim so far in the last 150 years about peddling the image of the British police collectively has been the slogan, policing by consent. Policing has never been done by consent, but that has been the tag, the boast, and the slogan. And this police bill completely demolishes, crushes, destroys, and denies that concept of policing by consent that has been in the slogan, not in the reality, but whatever the limitations up to now, up to this bill, were minor as compared to the comprehensive fascistic bill, which is the reason why people have been protesting against this bill under the banner of kill the bill. because the bill is killing democracy. That has been the main running theme and the narrative and the rhetoric that the protesters have been correctly, factually stating, both in Bristol and in other cities where the demonstrations have been taking place so far. And those demonstrations are likely to continue because of the comprehensive, drastic, fascistic package against democracy. So remember what the Daily Mail is doing in relation to Jennifer R. Curry and the scum with Trevor Kavanagh, the Scottish liar, one Scottish-born liar against Scotland, Scottish rights and democracy. Trevor Kavanagh has taken the dirty digger's shilling, and he will lie and distort and twist on command. So what he is doing, he is saying that the 10 or 12 or 15 Muslim parents protesting outside the Batley School are the ones real threat to democracy, and they are killing British democracy. Not the police bill, which is killing British democracy, not the behavior of the police who attack the women grieving for Sarah Everard. So look at the role of the Fleet Street. It is not a joke. When we say diagnosing Fleet Street, we are being modest and we are being kind to the perpetrators, because Fleet Street is a cesspit of anti-democratic attacks. It is the propaganda center for destruction of democracy, as we have known. The phrase is as we have known it. Now, Peterloo, let's see if we can find a short description of Peterloo. Peterloo is an area, part of the Manchester area in England. So this entry, of course, we say before reading anything from the entry on Wikipedia that Wikipedia itself is a platform for liars and lying and denial and suppression. But some common factors are contained in Wikipedia entries about things. So for that aspect, the common factors that they do carry and contain, we refer to items via the Wikipedia. And that is the disclaimer about our use. Now, Peterloo massacre took place at St. Peter's Field, Manchester, Lancashire, England, on Monday, the 16th of August, 1819. 18 people died when cavalry charged into a crowd of around 60,000 people who had gathered to demand the reform of parliamentary representation. After the end of the Napoleonic Wars in 1815, there was an acute economic slump accompanied by chronic unemployment and harvest failure, and exacerbated by the Corn Laws, which kept the price of bread high. At that time, only around 11% of adult males had the vote, very few of them in the industrial North, which was worst hit. Reformers identified parliamentary reform as the solution, and a mass campaign to petition Parliament for manhood suffrage gained 750,000 signatures in 1817, but was flatly rejected by the House of Commons. When a second slump occurred in early 1819, radical reformers sought to mobilize huge crowds to force the government to back down. The movement was particularly strong in the northwest of England, where the Manchester Patriotic Union organized a mass rally in August 1819, addressed by well-known radical orator Henry Hunt. Shortly after the meeting began, local magistrates called on the Manchester and Salford yeomanry to arrest Hunt and several others on the platform with him. The yeomanry charged into the crowd, knocking down a woman and killing a child, and finally apprehended Hunt. Cheshire magistrates, Chairman William Hulton, then summoned the 15th Hussars to disperse the crowd. They charged with sabres drawn, and between 9 and 17 people were killed and 4 to 700 injured in the ensuing confusion. The event was first labeled the Peterloo Massacre by the radical Manchester Observer newspaper in a bitterly ironic reference to the bloody Battle of Waterloo, which had taken place 4 years earlier. Historian Robert Poole has called the Peterloo Massacre the bloodiest political event of the 19th century in English soil, and a political earthquake in the northern powerhouse of the Industrial Revolution. The London and national papers shared the horror felt in the Manchester region, but Peterloo's immediate effect was to cause the government to pass the 6 Acts, which were aimed at suppressing any meetings for the purpose of radical reform. So look at the history. The struggle for democracy has been integral to the struggle for economic rights. And England, far from being the kind of center of democracy or source of democracy and leadership, so called, to the rest of the world, has been murdering people. The state has been murdering people, and the behavior of the magistrates, as I have read, confirm what I say. The British or the English judiciary is a racist and corrupt judiciary. Racist because racism has been increasingly pronounced in the behavior, and the racism wasn't the main factor in that time, but it has been since. And all of these facts you have to do research on. You cannot get any reference to these struggles in the Fleet Street papers or in the BBC bulletins. So, moving from the Boris Johnson criminality and lying and the Trevor Kavanagh terrible anti-Muslim kind of corruption in the Sun, blaming the Muslim parents for the death of democracy in Britain, while hiding the real killer of democracy, the Boris Johnson fronted British government and its bill, which all campaigners for the right to protest have been concerned about. So the revelations today, continuing references to the lobbying role by David Cameron, merely confirm the corrupt purpose for the existence of the Conservative Party, the corrupt, criminal, anti-democratic, and anti-social purpose for the Conservative Party. Cons. Despite all the evidence of how bad they are and how bad they are for the society, there is no sign of the opposition Labour Party. Keir Starmer is proving by his silence that he is a Tory. He doesn't have to say anything, Tory, but he is a Tory. He is letting the Tories destroy the country. Think about that. Now, here is a kind of slightly different kind of headline or heading on the front page of the Times, which says, "Cover up of abuse by pupils. The police chief accuses head teachers of trying to save reputations." And Me Too moment for education spreads to state schools. And it's written by two women and a man. Fiona Hamilton, crime editor, Emma Yeomans, not described, Stephen Swinford, political editor. And reading the first paragraph only. And the first paragraph reads, one of the country's most senior police officers has said he believes that schools have covered up sexual offenses to protect their reputations as a task force took charge of the surge in abuse complaints. And the chief constable is named as Simon Bailey. Now, remember what we said about the sexual exploitation and pimping and prostitution and rapes of mainly white girls by the gang or gangsters in northern England that were born to Pakistani origin parents. And we have condemned the silence of the Muslim so-called leaders on those crimes. And we have said that the police, the local councils, the local political party, which has been mainly the Labour Party, but not exclusively, have been colluded with the covering up of the crimes by these Pakistani descended, but English-born gangs of criminals that targeted mainly white girls. Now it appears that that was not just confined to the crimes done by the Pakistani descended criminals. It is the norm. School head teachers are allowing rapes of girls in their schools to keep their reputation. And Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, is a notorious sexual abuser of his positions. So we are in a banana republic. Britain is a banana republic. In all its imperial racist shame and disgrace. And the shame and the disgrace are being paraded as achievements by the Street of Shame. Remember? Street of Shame. Shame is the name of the collection of papers called Fleet Street by the Private Eye magazine. Now, this is a factual reference. That is to say, I am not therefore endorsing or thereby endorsing the whole editorial policy and agenda pursued by Private Eye itself, which is like the other mainstream or other parts of the media and so-called institutions and platforms in the country, totally anti-Muslim and totally racist and totally in denial. These Jennifer Arcuri disclosures sold to the Mirror Group should have been kind of published by Private Lie if the editor, Ian Pissoff, and his boasts about his magazine being the kind of main investigative paper or publication in this country were true. They were not true. They are not true because he doesn't publish that kind of information. But Private Eye, in common with the Street of Shame, all the others, including the Racist Society of Editors, have all been suppressing the news, the actual news that has been known to them, the facts about Boris Johnson having had a long relationship, sexual relationship with Jennifer Arcuri. It's not just sexual, remember? It's a business and pleasure. And his betrayal of his children that he has had with Marina Huila and the insulting behavior evident in the fact that he had sex with Jennifer Arcuri in the family home. And this is the 2-page spread about the school head teacher who has been hiding facts of rape and sexual harassment of girls by boys in the school. Now, it's a parade, it's a gallery of criminals. Anyone who is not resident in Britain, and including those people who wrongly, because of propaganda, it is not their fault, but wrongly associate Britain with a kind of ideal place to migrate to. I mean, all the powers exerted by people in various positions, decisions making, either in business, in politics, and in the media, are done by crooks and criminals and brazen kind of defiers of morality at every stage and ethics. And anyone who thinks that because the empire has ended, therefore there is a empire related guilt on the part of the decision makers or the party political leaders or members of parliament or whatever, would be kind of disappointed, because there is no such realization, there is no such awareness. And so this picture in the Times, which I have just introduced contextually, going with this 2-page coverage about the Highgate School. Highgate School head teacher is accused of putting public relations before pupils. Well, that is a wrong heading, because it's not about pupils, it's about girls, because the boys were sexually abusing and assaulting the girls. So pupil is not the word. So we have to correct the language, the English language, the English used by the English Times newspaper. It says, when Adam Pettit arrived as head teacher of Highgate School in 2006, it was seen as a mid-tier private institution that looked on longingly at a more well-heeled establishment such as Westminster School and Eton School or Eton College. Since then, he has overseen an ambitious rejuvenation project. turning it, that is the school, Highgate School, into one of the most sought after destination schools, with fees rising to 21,600, in line with its reputation. Current and former people say, however, that this drive, which has seen Pettit photographed with Simon Cowell and Sir Philip Green, has been to the detriment of safeguarding its female pupils. Remember? Even before reading that, I said that the word pupils was wrong because it was the girls who were being victims. And the headline completely misleading, or the heading is completely misleading. And what I said about the parade of criminals is Simon Cowell and Philip Green. Simon Cowell is a self-seeking part of the corrupt celebrity circuit and business and television. And he has got many wrongs being covered up by the collusion. And Philip Green is a serial liar and adulterer and a proven crook and a thief who has stolen hundreds of millions of public money. And you can look up Philip Green, and even the limited entry on Wikipedia will give you enough clues as to how criminal he is and has been. So these are the people that are now, the Times description of him is Sir Philip Green, not the thief, the notorious, the controversial, or anything like that. So you have to know so many facts and so much information, and you have to be able to compare and contrast and examine all of these in order to get the truth. And the truth of the Fleet Street behavior is so dense and so persistent that any examination of the contents of the Fleet Street papers will show that they have been hiding, they have been the facade, they have been the outside, they have been the kind of wall of denial of the evidence of all these wrongdoings and criminality and theft and robbery of the public and the attacks on democracy and freedom and the persistence and perpetuation of racism and imperial kind of boasts. So if Boris Johnson is a nasty piece of work, then the Banana Republic media and parliament and MPs are responsible for his getting anywhere near any elected post, let alone incumbent post as the Prime Minister of this country. Okay, so in the Boris graph, the main heading on the front page is something to do with racism directly. And I shall explain that. Now, I have said many times, anyone watching these broadcasts will know that I have said that the morons who use this word, so-called acronym, BAME, are doing the racist propaganda because they are denying the identity or collective identities of people, African people, Asian people, Muslims, whatever. Because this is the word, the acronym at issue, which is BAME. It is typical of the racist linguistics, rhetoric, devised by racists constantly to hide the identity and deny the identities of people who are already deprived of the rights. So it says here, scrap use of BAME label, race board tells Johnson. Acronym is outdated and unhelpful, says panel formed in wake of Black Lives Matter. Now, there is not a panel. What we have been offering has been ahead of the panel and at no cost to the public. In fact, to the benefit of the public, because we have been offering this analysis for a very long time. at no cost to anyone watching this. So here is let's say the first two paragraphs I'll read. The term BAME, B-A-M-E, that is the BAME. So the term BAME should no longer be used by public organizations and companies. Boris Johnson's Racial Disparities Commission is to recommend this week. Can you believe it? Racial disparity is it's not a commission to end racism. It is a commission for enhancing and aggravating and justifying racism. Scrapping the label, an acronym of Black, Asian, and Minority Ethnic, is one of the key proposals in a report from the Independent Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities, details of which have been shared with the Daily Telegraph. That is, Johnson himself has given it to the Boris Graph to promote. Oh my God. Now the next paragraph is horrible because they're describing a right-wing racist stooge of Afro-Caribbean origin called Tony Sewell. They are calling him an international educational consultant. Absolute lies. Tony Sewell has been a racist stooge who was given a platform by the racists created Vice newspaper, which is the Weekly Voice. And I have discussed the origins of the Vice newspaper, the Stooges paper, funded by the apartheid regime and the apartheid backing Barclays Bank in the 1980s. As a direct result of my work against racism at the East End News in 1981, they invented a page and then expanded that page into the Voice newspaper in order to stop me campaigning within the NUJ setup and framework against racism. That is something that will be updated in due course, but that's the short reference to this Tony Sewell. And the whole piece in the Boris Graph is absolute lies because they are crediting him for setting up that panel to end racial inequalities in this country, which is complete, absolute lies. And the reason why they are doing that is related to the same kind of agenda to mislead voters into voting for the cons at elections. The next one is in May, the local elections. And the same as the Brexiteering, lies and bribery and promises of bribery made to the northern kind of electoral constituencies, because those constituencies had more gullibles being lured to believe the Brexit lies and promises. And those played the key part in returning conservative candidates and ditching Labour candidates, directly resulting from the demonization of the leadership fronted by Jeremy Corbyn for the previous 5 years, or previous 4.5 years. Now, moving on to the other items, as I've said at the beginning, Johnson is ignoring warnings on the easing of the lockdown about the variants. And that is typical of Boris Johnson, who is totally unfit for purpose because he is now endangering more people's lives and safety and security. And the I newspaper, which used to belong to the same group as the Evening Standard and the Independent, owned by the Russian, called Two Beers by Private Lie, who has been made a member of the House of Peers by the corrupt Boris Johnson, who has been benefiting from his donations, etc. Johnson has been benefiting as a careerist operating. And this has become now a part of the propaganda for Boris Johnson because of that. It's not directly owned by Two Beers anymore, but still it is very much reflective of the agenda and the narrative, brazenly perpetrated daily by the Daily Mail group and the scum group, and the Boris Graph, also known as the Tory Graph, also known as the Telegraph. And about the situation in Burma, we have been posting regularly that the Western media has been shielding the genocide criminals and the genocide regime fronted by Aung San Suu Kyi in 2017 in Burma against the Rohingya people, the Rohingya Muslims. And we have been saying this is the coup that is currently being the subject of the so-called concern by the Western media, including the subject of the daily bulletins by the corrupt Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, is a diversion. It's a diversion from overdue trial for genocide by the genocide regime leader, Aung San Suu Kyi. And the diversion is proved in the fact that she is the head of the alleged opposition to the current military coup and its regime. So she is being painted as the victim, whereas she justifies the genocide of the Muslims. And she justifies the victimization of children, women, and other people in the Rohingya community who were massacred and murdered and raped and brutalized and done other things too. And the Financial Times proves it because on the very top of the front page, it has got this lying, diversional line, and all these references to the so-called coup that is undergoing now, or underway now in Burma. They don't refer to the genocide. They don't refer to the Rohingyas. And the Rohingyas currently are the people of a nation, the largest such numbers that are seeking shelter and refuge in other countries for the safety. The survivors of the genocide, let's say, the surviving Rohingyas after the genocide by the Burmese. So the Financial Times is the financial crimes, as we have named it, because it is promoting all the wrong elements. And the Financial Crimes is talking about the television series Line of Duty, about acronyms and so forth. But it's not talking about the line of duty, not exposing the corruption in the police, not just one police force, but in the police, corruption has been covered up for 150 years. And the Financial Times proves its corruption by tinkering at the edges. We should talk more about the Financial Times later, because there are certain issues that will need more explanation for the viewer and the whoever is watching this for the first time, let's say. Because some of the concepts and some of the topics are not directly, communicable, or expression need qualifying. And the rest of the papers today, as I said, this is the Daily Mail. So the Daily Mail is saying this paragraph, let's say, from the Jennifer R. Curry. It's all kind of respectful to Jennifer R. Curry. Compare and contrast the treatment of Meghan Markle. Imagine Meghan Markle or Harry were featuring in this story, this kind of story. They would say, declare war on them. And they're saying, the Daily Mail, that in 2020, The Independent Office for Police Conduct said it had found no evidence Mr. Johnson had committed a criminal offense of misconduct in public office. Now, that is a lie for various reasons, because whether Johnson committed misconduct in public office is not to be decided by the independent, what is it called? Independent police conduct, independent office for police conduct. It's for the police to inquire and investigate. And it's for the parliamentary commission and the director of public prosecutions and others. So the Banana Republic applies because there is no coherent, certain, reliable mechanism for incurring and investigating wrongdoing and holding to account people who make decisions that concern billions, trillions of pounds of public resource and impact worth trillions of pounds and human lives and the environment and all the rest of it. So it's like any of the banana republics where there is no rule of law, really, because no rule of law has been applied to hold Boris Johnson to account for his serial lying and his nastiness and all the rest of it. And the fault lies also with the death of the Labour Party. Who killed the Labour Party is the question. Now, Johnson, let's look at these pages. Now, they are saying that the Greater London Authority will grill Johnson. Given all the evidence, it is very unlikely, because the potential grillers are jokers. This woman is a Lib Dem, complete, absolute joke. Her name is Caroline Pigeon. And she is a joke because although she has been making all kinds of claims topically to feature in news items, she has not broken a single one of the lies on the pillars of lies that Boris Johnson has stood and stands. So therefore the Daily Mirror is overinflating her influence. So read this with the warning that I've just given. That says that Johnson is going to face a grilling that is tough questioning. That will not happen. As I said, in the last 74 years, since August 1947, Britain, after the collapse or the departure from the Indian subcontinent, has not produced anything of rigor, substance, morality, ethics. I mean, the events like the forced resignation of John Profumo in the 1960s were caused by other factors other than any concern for morality. Opportunistic forces came in and caused the departure of John Profumo. Now, this is a business advertisement for Jennifer Arcuri. She's got the business empire based on the fact that she has had 4 years of sex with Boris Johnson. This will be the advertisement she is going to use. And as I said, there has been no grilling And there is a surprising piece by this liar, Kevin McGuire, in the Mirror. Now, McGuire is a liar because he lies. He knew everything that we knew and everything they're publishing now in the Mirror. And yet his column today says, Boris's serial betrayal is no joke for Britain. Of course it is not. But McGuire was one of the gang of liars that actually took part in defaming and demonizing Jeremy Corbyn during the crucial years. And he should have actually said what he's saying today, all those years ago. He says, and McGuire says today that Boris's serial betrayal is no joke for Britain. Of course it is not. And he says that Boris Johnson is a cynical liar and a cheat, a charlatan, who treats the country as badly as he treats his family and Mistress Jennifer Arcuri. He's got all of this in one sentence. We know that from the 126,000 COVID deaths, from the slap in the face for nurses, growing poverty, bad Brexit deal, aid cuts that condemn to death the world's most desperate people and the smallest army in 307 years. Yet apologists who watched smiling as he escaped scandals worse than the misdemeanors bringing down lesser politicians or giggled about good old ladies man Boris may wonder if his luck is about to run out and all this rubbish. Well, I've said all of this, not in these words. But the point is that this Kevin McGuire himself colluded with the apologists, he says, apologists, smiley apologists for Boris Johnson. What is his excuse? And I'm not going to read the rest of his rubbish. So what we have got here so far is mainly the Boris Johnson lies, and we'll come to discussing the issue of David Cameron having lobbied a criminal outfit, and for his lobbying he benefited, according to reports, to the tune of 70 million pounds. Now remember David Cameron, he is the Brexit man. Cameron brought about Brexit. Let's look at the kind of linguistic and the rhetoric. Let's examine the evidence. What Brexit was used to do was to prevent the disintegration of the Conservative Party. Now, just like Jennifer Arcuri's confessions, with the qualifications that I have added, qualifications meaning that she is doing it as a business. She has been always a business person, and she says in the interview that she gave to the Mirror Group, quote, "I was never defined by Boris Johnson." That is very telling. If she was never defined by Boris Johnson, let's look at the telling. Why is she publishing these things about Boris Johnson? And why did she tell serial reporters, a series of reporters in the last few years, that she was not going to interfere with whatever Boris Johnson was doing? That means that she was part of the project even after she allegedly ended the affair in 2016. So throughout the following year, she has been capitalizing on her affair and relationships and links with him. While doing that, she's also been part of his business and his career, protecting his career from being destroyed by revelations of the part that they were having sex for 4 years. Intimate and desperately hectic sex because of the details that she has now confessed or published. So she was lying as well, because she was lying to protect his political career from collapsing. What a difference that would have been if his career had collapsed before the 2019 election. Now, with that kind of comparison, the Brexit that Boris Johnson lied to kind of claim credit for was a Brexit that was actually made possible and launched by David Cameron, whom we have given the name Scameron, scam and then Cameron. We have been calling him Scameron, and some people may have observed that maybe we have been unkind. But this week's revelation that he has pocketed the equivalent of 70 million pounds for his lying lobbying vindicates us a million times. Because Cameron, unlike Boris Johnson and Theresa May, has claimed that he was a supporter of the UK staying in Europe. That is absurd. He made it possible to take the UK out of Europe. He had no obligation. He had no legal or democratic obligation to announce the Brexit process. But he did. And he destroyed so much of the positive democratic things for Britain that had been done over the previous decades. Now this Cameron is caught not about Brexit, but caught as a crook, lobbying for crooks. And it's Cameron who was killing people by withholding their benefits and causing them to commit suicide. Think about these contrasts. And there is this growing demand for his crimes to be kind of held to account. So we shall be taking a break here and continuing. So this is about 12 minutes to 11 hours GMT, 1100 hours GMT on Monday, the 29th of March, 2021.